Leber. NFL Draft.
Ben Leber at Nacho Leber via the tweet machine. Twin Cities live today, 3 to 4:30 on Channel 5. Some very nice behind-the-scenes breakdowns and sit-downs on Twin Cities live today with the likes of Jerzon Newton, Graham Barton, and I understand Spencer Rattler also will make his appearance on Twin Cities live today, 3 to 4:30 Channel 5. It is all draft all the time today on Channel 5, right?
I mean, what you throw out Spencer Rattler as if we can't get McCarthy.
I know, right?
We got McCarthy and we've got Drake May both on Zoom. Calling into Twin Cities Live.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And with Spencer Rattler, I mean, I got pushed on Rattler at the combine. In that, it's a lot of things that I've heard you and others say is that we got some personality quirks here. We have a purported or alleged high opinion of oneself, and then there may need be some humility. The NFL mostly will humble individuals. Like I'm listening to you guys this morning with Caleb Williams, entitlement and just A, B, C, D, and all the money he made in the NIL. I mean, you know this better than anybody, and correct me if I'm wrong, because a quarterback's a different beast.
Yeah,
but players, they humble rookies and humble players in practice and or on the field. And if that's a problem with Rattler, Williams, or whomever, I mean, I envision the conversations being like say DJ Moore or Keenan Allen, a couple of super well respected veterans. Dog, I don't care what you made, who you are, where you got drafted. You ain't doing this right. And if you don't do it right, we're going to have a problem behind the scenes here. And I ain't talking about a fight. I'm just saying that we're going to be off kilter. So like when it comes to those, say Caleb Williams and say, I don't know, or Spencer Rattler, and they lack self-awareness. Well, once they get in there with the veterans, those problems have a way of fixing themselves. Would you agree?
They do. I would say that, look, I don't know from firsthand experience because I'm not a quarterback, but I would think that it's harder for a quarterback, especially a quarterback that's being asked to come into a team and lead that team on day one like Caleb Williams. Unlike Spencer Rattler, who you're using as an example, he's going to come in and he'll be a backup and he'll just, hopefully, scrapping claws way into maybe a starting role somewhere, someplace down the road. But for a guy like Caleb, it's harder for these guys to come in and they say, here's the key to the team. You need to be our leader on day one. And oh, by the way, you need to humble yourself. It's like, that's harder to break a guy down like that, even when the veterans get around and they're like, hey man, different league, you got to earn our respect. You still have, you're not the guy just yet. You've got to put team first and not you first. It's harder to do that, I think, when the guys are just given that role as immediate leader of the football team, and he is the franchise guy. I think for a guy like Rattler or any of these other players, you can come in, get humbled, get sort of proverbially broken down, and then build yourself back up sort of quietly, in the weeds and just kind of working your way back up. You can metamorphose in that way. I think it's harder for a guy like Caleb Williams. He is who he is.
And I didn't know until I heard you say this morning, simply because I put minimal time into Caleb Williams after somebody from the AFC told me at the combine that, he comes into the league, and if he does it right, he's top 10 game one, and moving forward has top 5, top 3 to him with his skill set. But then all the stuff that you talked about, that that started to emerge there too. But I didn't know Rattler beat him out of his job in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Or Caleb couldn't beat Spencer until you said it this morning. That's a little eye-opening here.
Yeah, it's interesting how both of those guys have taken a different path to the draft. It's funny how, and I get that there's different draft selections and slots for these players, and the player that I'll talk about is Bo Nix. I think that he's a better player than other people, and they'll say, well, he was so terrible at Auburn, and all of a sudden now he goes to Oregon. What was the difference? He got in a simplified scheme. But then yet when you talk about Spencer Rattler, you're like, well, look at this diamond in the rough. It's the same situation. He was really good at Oklahoma for a hot second, and then he couldn't stop turning the ball over, got benched, and then decides to transfer. Immediate starter at South Carolina. There was no competition there. They were like, look, you're coming in here and here's your job. And credit to him, credit to the offensive scheme, the offensive coordinator. He goes on and has a pretty good career at South Carolina. Yet we want to give him all the praise for having better numbers, better productivity. Bo Nix goes to a new team, and all of a sudden it's like, well, come on. It's Oregon,
right?
And it's a simplified offense, and anybody can have those yards. It's short throws. It's not being asked to do much. I'm like, oh, so you love Spencer Rattler's path to the draft, but you hate Bo Nix's path to the draft. You can't have it both ways.
That's so perfect. Yeah, right, because that specifically in the day and age of the transfer portal and NIL and all that, different conversations are emerging. Why somebody SEC, more rough and tumble defense than the Pac-12 has played in 30 years. Okay, so I see what you're saying there, but with Rome Odunze, the Washington wide receiver. So if the Bears go Caleb Williams and then come back with that cat at 9, I've been thinking about it for 2 days because you were the first to tell me because I haven't watched him play. He has position flexibility, but out of the slot, look out. So you got DJ Moore and you got Keenan Allen. Say you go 4 wide, you can split a Cole Kmet or whomever slot, and then you got Odunze as part of a 3 or 4 receiver set with a quarterback who should be pretty good. Off-play action with running backs who are decent enough. Now they got DeAndre Swift. Ain't nobody tripping on him, but he's better than a fair amount in the league. I mean, if they go Williams, Odunze, what do you think?
Then
I'm looking at his face.
Then we better find a way. We better find a way as the Vikings to get into the second round.
Yeah. or we're going to trade up to finagle 8 and 9 and get Terry and Arnold and Quinyon Mitchell.
Bro,
a pass rusher.
Look, I don't, man. I mean, we're going to be a situation where we're going to need to find some corners and find them fast. Because that's going to be.
That might happen.
Very well.
Odunze, I mean.
Very much could happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people are kind of, mocking a lot of drafts where that could happen, where they get their franchise quarterback and they get a guy like Odunze or somebody like that really bolsters their offense. And now all of a sudden, you've got kind of a rock star, at least on paper. They haven't proven anything yet, but, an unbelievably talented offensive group with the Bears, and now they've got to put everything together. And then you've got the kitties over in Detroit building their super physical team with their new signees, and they're super happy and they're feeling it, they're grooving. And then you've got Green Bay, who's super happy with Jordan Love and what they're doing. They're building their roster, and all of a sudden now we got to start playing catch up, especially defensively, in the defensive backfield to compete with these guys. And Odunze is unbelievable. I mean, he's a big-bodied guy. All the things that go with it: long arms, big catch radius, all that other stuff. Dude ran a 4.3. I mean, he's a 6'3" dude, runs a 4.3. I think the one metric that I think really stands out: the last 2 years. If you take the last 2 years, when he was targeted, is a quarterback rating of 122.
Jeez.
He's just a production machine. Every time the ball is thrown his direction, he's making plays.
Well, think about this. I mean, from an ancillary standpoint, shame on teams if the president of a team or an owner comes over the top and is like, well, I don't care how much work the scouts and everybody has put in. We're taking this guy. Mm-hmm. So shame on teams that permit that to happen. However, it can't be disputed. A team in search of billions of taxpayer dollars to get a stadium going Williams, Odunze, and assuming they both work, well, that generates a lot of excitement.
Yes, it does.
And to get that cash and to get certain constituents to potentially flip on opinions they have now, I mean, you need excitement. Offense brings excitement. So I've just been thinking about it that way a little bit, too.
No, yeah. I mean, look,
I mean, there are good offensive linemen, 3 techniques and pass and edge guys. Ain't moving the needle like Williams to Odunze for a ninth time this year.
Offense is sexy, man. I mean, it's like all these teams, even when we were doing the mock draft this morning, there's going to be several teams tonight that are going to be taking offensive tackle and interior offensive linemen. And every year, without fail, it's kind of like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Let's move on. I mean, it's not moving the needle.
Yeah.
It's not. People aren't buying tickets. It's not like everybody's hammering their phones.
It's foundational.
It's foundational, and you're going to be so happy that they did it. And it's the one thing that we talk about. You have to build from the inside out, and we know that it has to be done. But nobody is buying season tickets in Chicago or otherwise.
There you go.
And nobody's going to sign some petition to get the new Lakefront Dome Stadium built because you draft an offensive lineman.
Right.
You do it because you're going to have a guy like Caleb and a receiver that he can throw to.
We need to stay calm this evening. We start at 6:30. It's going to be you, Charch, and I think Gabe Henderson the first half hour, Bursic has some TV clump, and then the first pick will take place between 7 and 7:15. It's going to be packed. I heard you guys talk about it. It's sold out. But we know from talking about this for months and change, it may be, ad nauseum quarterback this and quarterback that. But the fan base, this is unprecedented, at least in all my years living here, all my years doing a draft show. This is significant, and we have to stay calm this evening because, it's right out of the gate, man. Bears cool, Washington cool. But then when Washington's done, we're just going to be sitting there looking at that ticker to see like trade. Then if it doesn't happen there, we got to stay calm just in case they couldn't or weren't interested in getting up there because we, speaking for you, and if you know and you're holding it, then A, God bless you, congratulations. But B, they're just doing a really good job keeping things quiet with what they want to do this year. And then if Arizona comes up and we don't see trade, we got to stay calm. And that's because I'm envisioning one of two things happening tonight with 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people at U.S. Bank Stadium for the draft party and the radio show, which begins at 6:30 on KFAN. Trade up. If the trade up happens and it's the Vikings to get a quarterback, ain't nobody tripping on 3 first-round picks. If that'll be the quick twitch for some. The place is going to go nuts because it's an opportunity to dream. Even those who listen to 9 to Noon, follow you, and listen to things you say, we'd bet everything Darnold starts game 1 unless new quarterback comes in training camp and just obliterates him. But that's part of the dreamscape. When you get up there and get a quarterback like that and they don't play initially, which is fine, specifically when they're 21 years of age, it affords people an opportunity to dream of what it's going to be like. So I envision a second to none eruption of positivity from fans of all the 2 decades of draft shows that I've hosted. On the other side, if New England picks and Arizona picks and the Chargers pick and the Giants pick and then we have the Titans and we're sitting there at 11, do you think they'll boo? Do you think that fans are so wound up and geared up that this is going to happen? And I've never seen him play, but I just want it to happen because it gives me a chance to dream about my squad. Do you think they'll boo vociferously if it doesn't happen?
If we don't move up?
Or we pick 11, well, then it could. Do you think
you're saying if we don't move up? So that 30 minutes.
Let me add one thing. If they take a quarterback at 11, do you believe that there will be an eruption?
Yes.
Okay, me too.
Yes.
But you see what I'm saying, though.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Look, as you laid that out when the Patriots go on the clock, the anticipation, the crescendo builds.
We have to stay calm.
We have to stay calm.
Yeah, I'm preaching to myself. It
is a simmer, right? But you got my loins tingling a little bit.
Yeah, but I'm really preaching to I'm purposely trying to be mellow.
Hold on.
Right now, and not project loudly. I'm glad you have a triple header with Power Trip, Twin Cities Live, 3 to 4:30, Channel 5, then the Life Changer tonight. And I'm going to turn it into a 2.5 timer type day with some work in the middle of the day just to stay calm. Okay.
Yeah. No. What were you saying?
What were you saying?
I heard something about loins tingling. And I was hold on a second.
As he's painting the picture of what's going to happen tonight, there's going to be potentially, you have 10 minutes while the Patriots are on the clock. Maybe nothing happens. And then you've got Arizona on the clock. So that's 20 minutes on the clock. And then potentially you got the Chargers on the clock where we do nothing.
Oh, so Harbaugh hates us.
Harbaugh hates us. I don't see that. But you've got 30 minutes right there in that little block of just spine-tingling, edge of your seat excitement.
Well, and then the Giants take JJ at 6.
Yeah.
Well, and then all of a sudden, trade pops up.
Yeah.
Denver Broncos, and you're like, oh no!
Bruh.
Like I can't
Yeah.
Guys, that's the thing. Like, I'm trying to keep my cool because there's a lot of things that could happen.
Yeah.
I don't see that the Broncos are going to leapfrog us, but
Agreed.
We just don't know. I mean, there's hopes, there's dreams, there's the excitement of the disappointment. And do I think that people are going to boo? Absolutely. I mean, if it's not the person that individual, that group of drunk individuals think the Vikings should get, because the potential for quarterbacks is very polarizing. It's very polarizing. I mean, there are people out there right now listening that love Drake May and hate J.J. McCarthy.
Yep.
Love McCarthy and hate Drake May.
Right.
And then you start throwing in the idea of like, well, if we don't get either one of those guys, is Penix the guy? Oh, should we just trade back then? Or what about Bo Nix? And we just mentioned his name. So I think people have fallen in love and got emotionally attached to certain quarterbacks.
Right.
It's not going to be 100% across the board. Everybody's going to be, jumping for joy. I do think that there's going to be excitement, joy that if we move up, draft any quarterback, because we're declaring like this is our guy. This is our guy for the foreseeable future, and let's ride with him. But for sure, there's going to be some disappointment. There's going to be some excitement. I'm hoping we're cracking beers and we're celebrating. It's going to be a lot of fun, man.
Well, that's sweet. So I mentioned this to PA earlier in the week, and we talked about it Saturday when Sauce and I did a pre-draft bit. The idea, people look at it kind of black and white. It's like best case scenario, worst case scenario, and however that spectrum looks in between. Do you see that there's a worst case scenario? Can you really wake up tomorrow morning, regardless of what happens, and say that this has been an absolute disaster? Vikings not able to trade up to 3. You mentioned the way that people fall in love with quarterbacks. I've fallen in love with scenarios, right? So, and then if they stick and pick at 11 and 23, they end up with a couple of defensive players. Is it worst case scenario that they walked out without a QB? At some point, do we have to wait 6-7 months and actually watch a season with these rookies, whoever is chosen, and see how this plays out before you can even fathom talking about it? I don't really see that worst case scenario, regardless of the events that take place tonight. I don't see that fitting into the equation. Have you looked at it that way at all?
I have a little bit, and I agree with you. I don't think there's the worst case scenario, yes, is you walk away and for some reason or another, you make some bad moves or lack of movement and you walk away with no quarterback. Even at 23, something happens, whatever, you walk away with no. That is the worst. But I put that scenario and that option less than 1%. Like I'm not even giving it any thought because I just don't think that that's going to happen. They're not going to allow that to happen. Even if they miss at 11, they will find a way to make that 23rd pick either a quarterback or moving up in the draft from 23 to get a quarterback and to secure at least walking away with what they think is their future at that spot. I think there are some scenarios that are less than ideal, but every single one of them involves a quarterback being selected. And the thing is, I like, everybody has rankings on their quarterbacks. I think the worst case scenario, quote unquote, worst case scenario is we end up with Bo Nix. Outside of that, I'm cool with any one of the guys at the top. I love Penix. I've talked about him before. His biggest thing to me is his injury red flags. I don't even know personally if I would put my reputation on his knees and his shoulder, and his knees more specifically because he's a taller, lankier guy. He's not super strong build, lower body, but he's athletic and he's got all these other things that we can talk about tonight. But I like him from a skill standpoint, and I think he fits this offense really, really well. I just don't know if I'd put my own reputation on drafting the guy, hoping that he's going to be the guy for the next 10 years, and then he gets hurt. And all of a sudden you find out that his knees maybe are worse than you thought. All of that stuff. So that being said, I'm happy with Drake May. I'm happy with McCarthy. And pie in the sky, Jaden Daniels is there. That's not going to happen, but we would love to have that option as well.
Do you want the Minnesota Vikings to trade up to number 3 with the New England Patriots? Basically, no matter what they give up, but let's say it's 3 first-round picks. Do you want that to happen this evening?
I mean, I know that it all depends on what they give up. If
let's just say 3 first-round picks.
Yeah, it's the swap. It's a swap of 3 and 11, 23 next year's first.
Yes, for 3.
Okay. I'm fine with that compensation. And yes, I would love for that to happen. I don't think the Patriots are going to do it.
Why?
I'm in the camp of this is a top heavy draft for quarterbacks. Take the guy. Just take the guy. Mm-hmm. You need a quarterback. Everybody knows it. Why cross your fingers and hope that you can get another quality quarterback in next year's draft for free agency? Just get the guy and build around him. I get that you have a lot of holes. Yes, you can add a first this year. You can add a first next year. That's two guys that are going to make your team hopefully better. But you've got a lot of other holes to fill. And there's no other spot that makes everybody else better than that quarterback spot. So that's
including defensive players.
Including defensive players.
Moving forward with a quarterback who probably won't play a lot this year.
You find your franchise quarterback. If you've got an offense now that can score points consistently, that absolutely helps out the defense. You can win games with lesser quality defensive players as you take time to rebuild that roster and still be competitive and win games because you have a franchise quarterback. So I'm in the camp of they're not going to move unless the Vikings or somebody else just throw them this insane, nonsensical value package that they're like, well, we can't turn this down, and we're still going to get a quarterback at 11, blah, blah, blah. So I think that they stay. I think that the three first rounders is fine. And I like this idea, no matter who it is. If they think it's JJ McCarthy, I'm all in.
Yeah.
Because that just means to me that you guys are committed. There's a plan. You guys you spent the last 4 months plus evaluating these guys, and you've locked in on this is the best potential guy that we have available. He's our guy, and we do not care what the critics think. Take the Brad Holmes approach. Don't care. This guy fits what we're doing. Yeah. He's got the right mental makeup. He fits in our scheme. We may have, quote unquote, overdrafted him. Don't care. We're going to get our guy.
I don't know in closing if this is exactly how you answered Nordo's question about like worst case scenario. I mean, I like that approach because it's the other side of the album that really has been underplayed, not thinking that it's going to be super. It can be super easy to get a quarterback. Okay, you trade up to 3, they say no. 4 and 5, they say no. Well, you can take Michael Penix Jr. or Bo Nix at 11. Mm-hmm. So when I say it's easy to get one, you can get one of those two at 11. So what would, and maybe you answered this, if you did, I apologize. Truly is the worst case scenario for the Minnesota Vikings this evening, just Thursday, is if they leave the first round without a quarterback.
Yes.
No quarterback taken.
No quarterback taken. Right. I think it's the worst case scenario because we don't have any day 2 picks as of right now. And I'm not putting my money on the fact that you're going to get a 4th rounder that you think is going to be a franchise quarterback.
Right.
And if you're in that world and you're those people that are like, well, look at Tom Brady, look what he did. I'm like,
I think Cousins is the go-to example for a draft like this. I mean, where if you believe the depth is there with maybe a little less than a handful of quarterbacks taken Saturday to get second contracts as either starters or high-end backups. I mean, Cousins was round 4. So it's like, Cousins is top 10-ish. He's top 10 in the NFL, but obviously there are deficiencies that people talk about, lack of mobility, things like that. But I mean, if you were to use 11 and 23 or move around and get whatever non-quarterbacks you want. So say you end up with Arnold, the cornerback from Alabama, and Jerzon Newton or Byron Murphy II, a couple of defensive guys, Graham Barton, super versatile offensive lineman from Duke, 2 of those. And then I can tell you on Saturday, like casting the gaze the way of faith and the gridiron gospel, and you just know this is going to happen. If I could get you Kirk Cousins, something like that on Saturday, would you take it?
No.
Why?
Because Cousins wasn't great his first few years.
Right.
Cousins needed. I mean, the thing that I love about Kirk is that like he's constantly. It's like what we preach to our youth athletes, our college athletes, and certainly it's harder once you get in the NFL because these guys all think that they know something and they know everything, but it is about continual daily improvement. That's it. I mean, that's the grind.
Yeah.
I'm going in the lab. I'm grinding. Like, do you really even know what that means? It means having this laser beam focused attitude and approach to life when it comes to athletics of getting better every single day. And to do that, you have to evaluate your own personal strengths and weaknesses, which people don't want to do. They don't want to look at their weaknesses and own up to it.
Right.
Kirk Cousins has done that through his whole career. He wasn't he's not the player that he was last year before he got injured with us is 180 degrees different than the player that he came into as a young rookie as a fourth rounder.
And dramatically different than 2017 when the Vikings were at FedEx Field and he threw for a bunch and Keenum beat him despite back-to-back interceptions. The coach, the system, the Kubiak, the Stefanski, the O'Connell, that turned it around for Kirk, right?
All of it. And it doesn't get turned around unless you have the mentality of like, look, I get it. I've got my warts. I need to remove those warts and I need to make those into positives. And that took a lot of time. And I'm not saying that guys can't do it on a quicker pace, but why gamble? Why gamble with a fourth rounder or beyond and just hope? Oh, let's cross our fingers and hope that JJ really just like loves him and, our offense. And we've got these studs on offense that are just going to like kind of just sway in the wind until this guy figures it out. Hell no. I want a dude that can play, soon.
Relatively soon.
I know Darnold can be a guy for a year, maybe. Yep. He's not the guy going forward. I want a guy that we can lean on for the next 10 years.
Listen to Ben with Pete Bursich, Paul Charchian, and yours truly this evening from the House of Purple Pain, U.S. Bank Stadium. The draft show on KFAN begins at 6:30, and you can watch him 3 to 4:30 today on Channel 5. It's TCL. Yeah, the big focus, given the Minnesota Vikings could end up with Drake May, is a focus on North Carolina barbecue, where today they'll focus on brisket and burnt ends and how to properly prepare them this spring. Can't wait to work with you tonight. Watch you on TV. See you later.
Can't wait. See ya.
We're going to go to Detroit, and the voice of the Detroit Lions, Dan Miller, Dan the Man on the Fan. He's in the belly of the beast. He is the Vox for the best team in the NFC North. We'll see what he has to say around the corner. It's draft day on KF.
Hardcore football.
Dan the Man is on the Fan. He's Dan Miller, voice of the Detroit Lions. The NFL draft is in the D, and here's Dan the Man joining us now. Good morning, and what's it like having the draft in the Motor City?
It's very cool, and I think anybody would say that. This is in my mind, PA, become one of the biggest events in all of sports. We talk about this for 12 months. It provides hope to every NFL team. People pour over these things, hoping their teams will select the right players. So this thing has just blown up in terms of what it means in the landscape of the National Football League, and we know where the National Football League stands in the landscape of sports. So there's two stories. It's the story of Detroit hosting the draft and everything that comes with that and putting the city on display and all the work that's gone into that. But then there's the football side of this thing that doesn't change because you have Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell and the Lions trying to figure out ways to make this team better and continue to build a depth chart, which they've done a very nice job of since they got here 3 years ago.
So it's in the Greektown area or Greektown from a picture I saw yesterday. So you have the Greektown Casino, you have all those wonderful Euro places, you have the producer's favorite place, Bazooki's. Is it just going to be wild in Greektown? How many people are we talking about here?
Yeah, they said this morning that there's been that they've set a record for the number of apps that have been downloaded that give you access to the different events. So they're anticipating hundreds of thousands of people. I've seen everything from 200 to over 300. So we'll have to wait and see. I don't know if that counts daily and then they count them again the next day or how that works. But, over 3 days, they're certainly expecting hundreds of thousands of people. It's in a spot called Cadillac Square, and Cadillac Square is right in Campus Martius in downtown. And then it really goes down Woodward all the way to the river where Hart Plaza is sitting right up against the river. So it's taken up a significant footprint of downtown that have closed roads everywhere. And it's a healthy hike that you get, going from one side to the other to take you through all the things that they have going on, from the NFL experience up through the draft theater.
Dan, as a voice of the Lions and also sports director, anchor for Fox 2, like what's your night like tonight? Are you doing a bunch of Fox 2 hits? Are you going to be at the draft or what?
Yeah, so I will be Allen Park, where Holmes, Campbell, and all the decision makers will be. And then we will have people actually down in the draft theater. Not to get too far into the weeds, but ESPN is extremely protective of what we can show down there and what we can do live. And so we're restricted somewhat in what we can do. But we have, I'm taking more the football side of it. And as soon as the Lions make a pick, I run upstairs, I grab Dan Campbell, we come down. We turn that around on television. We have one special from 7:30 to 8. We have one special from 11:30 to midnight. I am praying they make their pick right around 11:30 or before, because if they trade out of the first round, we're going to be trading recipes from 11:30 to 12 with nothing to talk about.
Right.
So we have it all covered. We will have people in the middle of what's going on downtown to give you the flavor. We will have the football side of it covered from the team's facility. And we will have Jennifer Hammond will be backstage at the draft theater. So you're really just trying to make sure people get a little taste of everything that's going on. But my main focus tonight will be the football side of it.
My brother, how about your squad right now? I mean, seriously, it's just beautiful the way things are being handled. Big Amon-Ra St. Brown, I love him. I've loved him since he was a rookie. He got that big deal. He's worth every penny. Everybody out there loving that, I assume?
Oh, yeah, that and Penei Sewell getting his deal as well. They're just they're everything that you want to build a football team around, from their attitude, their desire to be great, their desire to lift the team and their teammates. PA, it's not complicated in theory that you're supposed to draft well and then develop well, and then you look up and your depth chart looks good, and all of a sudden you say, you know what, we're a pretty good team. But it is difficult in execution, and we found that out here. And I think, I got tons of friends left in D.C. where I grew up, and they'll say to me, man, what they're going through it with the Commanders, and they'll be like, what's the key? And I'm like, the key is the people you hire. If I've learned anything, it's the people that you have pulling the strings and in charge and making the decisions. And it finally feels like in Detroit, we got that right. There's so much trust in Brad Holmes and his ability and Dan Campbell and his ability. And it has to be both things. It is finding, in the fourth round an Amon-Ra St. Brown and committing to drafting in the top 10 of Penei Sewell. But then everybody else, all these guys, once they get here, it's the coach's job to then turn them into NFL players. And that's going hand in hand right now in Detroit. And that is, as you would say, the beautiful thing of what's happening is they're drafting and then they're developing. For a long time, we didn't see guys get second contracts. We didn't have to worry about salary caps and things like that. Now we got a ton of guys coming up on second contracts, and you start looking at it, you're trying to figure out how you're going to get it all done. But that's a good problem to have because that means you're being successful.
Would you sense, and I'm not subterfuge or panic guy, but I mean, would you sense there's even an inkling of a problem moving forward with the quarterback, Jared Goff?
No, I sense just reading the tea leaves that they're probably a little bit apart right now, and I do not have anything to base that on. I know Schefter put something out there, I think a couple weeks ago, that said Goff's camp wants something that starts with a 5, and the Lions camp wants something that starts with a 4. I have no idea if that's true on a per-year basis.
Right.
But, the fact that it's not done yet tells me that they're still working through it. And Goff has made a couple of public appearances where he's talked about the fact that this is where he wants to be. I truly believe that. I've spent enough time with him to know that he loves it here and loves what this organization is doing and appreciates what they've done for him. But quarterback contracts are not easy things to negotiate. And I think they're working through that right now. And I do believe it'll get done. And I don't think they want him going into the last year of a contract, playing for a contract with a team that they believe can be a contender. So, I think it's fair to say, based on just reading the tea leaves, they're not on the same page right now. But we know how these things go. You're not on the same page until you are, and then it works out.
If it falls the right way, and if only to get a fifth-year option, and would you be shocked if the Lions took a quarterback at the end of the first round?
Yes,
right.
I would. I think drafting Hendon Hooker last year, I think they really like him. Watching the way that he developed throughout the season, just watching what he did after practice, how much time they invested in him. I think they believe that he can be a very nice quarterback down the line. You're talking about somebody that might have been a top 10 pick if he hadn't hurt his knee at Tennessee. So I think they feel very good about him. I do think, to your point, it's really tough to put your finger on what they're going to do because I think if you look at their roster, they feel good about the fact that they could go play a game right now. They've filled the holes. Doesn't mean you can't get better. It doesn't mean you don't have needs, and it doesn't mean that there aren't things that you have to get done here. But, I wouldn't say quarterback, but I think you can make the case for interior offensive line. I think you can make the case for wide receiver. I think you can make the case for cornerback. I think you can make the case for anywhere on the defensive line. I think they're pretty wide open, and that's a byproduct of them feeling good about the roster that they've put together. Again, not a finished product. I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying that.
Right.
But I don't think they have to force themselves into anything.
You, my friend, are elite. Enjoy the evening, and we'll chat soon, okay?
Appreciate you, bud. We'll talk to you soon.
See you, man. Dan Miller. Dan the Man on the Fan, longtime play-by-play voice for the Motor City Kitties.
9 to noon.
The steamrolling continues 9 to noon, day one of the National Football League draft. And here is one of the steamiest of all steamy ever to steam. He's Brandon Krisztal at BK Denver Sports, host and reporter for KOA out Denver way. He's been a frequent contributor to 9 to noon. My man works harder than most and is extremely plugged in. And today's a major steam day. So we welcome BK into the mix. Brandon, Paul Allen, good morning.
Hey, PA, great to talk to you. It's kind of like Christmas in April, right? This is a date that certainly lots of football fans circle on their calendar, and I have to think the Vikings, who many think could be interested in a quarterback, but with picks at 11 and 23, it's a really big day there for so many Vikings fans.
Yeah, that's great. And we've discussed that for the last 3 months, and I'm not being snarky here, but the purpose for the hook is, do you have any steam? I mean, again, if you're one of the steamiest of all steamy ever to steam, which you are, do you have any steam? What's percolating with you today, my brother?
Well, I'm going to go back to when I talked to you after the NFL owners meetings, and I told you I had a conversation with somebody very high up in the Vikings organization and mentioned that if the Broncos wanted to, they could include Pat Surtain Jr. in a trade, which would, in a lot of people's opinion, maybe trump 11 and 23, 12 and Pat Surtain, and these days with a disgruntled Cortland Sutton, you could throw Cortland Sutton in too, as well as the future firsts. That could perhaps be more attractive depending on who the trade partner is if you're trying to leapfrog the Vikings. And then plenty of the great Vikings fans out there ran with it that I was saying that's what they're doing. And it wasn't what I was saying. I was saying that they have the capability to do it, that if you love a guy, no matter what, you go get him. Then Diana Rossini says it yesterday in The Athletic that they could include Pat Surtain Jr. in a trade. And so all of a sudden everyone's running with it. And I was like, yeah, that's what I said to PA a month ago. The point being they don't have to do that, but they have that option. So you hear so much, and I think the stuff you don't hear is what interests me more than what you do hear, because anybody that you trust isn't going to give you anything just in case it slips out there one way or another,
right? Or
they'll just ignore you because they don't want to lie to you, right? So I think that's what I deal with leading up to the draft more than anything, although I did reach out to a coach a couple of years ago as I was doing a mock draft, and I said, this player seems like they'd be a really good fit for you where you're picking in the late teens, and they said, yeah, absolutely, and that's who they drafted. So I think that every now and then you'll get lucky with one of those, but this is so much about smoke screens and misinformation, and as I think I mentioned to you when you were in Denver, I feel like I'm the first person that ever hashtagged lying season, and we have yet to find anything to refute that, any evidence to refute that. So it's truly the lying season, and in some ways I can't wait for it to end.
Better chance to leave the first round with a quarterback, the Denver Broncos or the Minnesota Vikings?
I think the Vikings.
And why?
For a couple of reasons. I think that they obviously have the ammo to move up. They don't have to move up as far, but having 11 and 23 this year is maybe more palatable than the Broncos having to include Pat Surtain to get in front of the Vikings. And I'm not convinced. I don't think the Zach Wilson move precludes the Broncos from doing anything because it didn't cost them much, a couple $1 million, and they flipped a 6th and a 7th. So Zach Wilson being here doesn't mean, oh, we're set at quarterback, because they know what Zach Wilson might be, but they also know what he isn't. And right now he's not a down in, down out franchise QB. If he was, the Jets would have never traded for Aaron Rodgers. They would have just rolled with their number 2 pick. But that was just 3 years ago. They selected him after Trevor Lawrence. So I think that when you hear that, oh, the Broncos have done so much work on Bo Nix or so much work on J.J. McCarthy, all these teams do all the same amount of work on all these guys. And I mentioned Pat Surtain. there's the other side of that coin. The only time the Broncos talked to Pat Surtain Jr. leading up to the draft was at the combine in something called the train station, where position coaches and coordinators might come up and talk to a kid for a minute or two, introduce themselves, and circle back around. But George Payton, because he was with Miami when Pat Surtain Sr. was playing there and has followed the kid and knew what he was about and talked to plenty of people at Alabama and him growing up, he didn't have to meet Pat Surtain. He knew what he was getting. So sometimes it's what we're not hearing that, and who we're not hearing that a team likes that interests me. The opposite being, Caleb Williams going 1, Joe Burrow going 1. Even we found out Baker Mayfield was going 1. That's the only time you don't need to be discreet about it or secretive. Just say, hey, this is our guy. We're going to roll with him. Like, I hope the Bears don't take more than 3 or 4 minutes to get that pick in, because we just want to get this thing rolling.
NFL Network's Peter Schrager, who I know that you know quite well, envisions up to 10 first-round trades, but they won't start until maybe the Chargers at 5. Do you see it that way?
I do. And there's so many teams that like these tackles, like these wideouts, like these corners that, I mentioned the Broncos not needing a quarterback at 12 or not pulling the trigger if there's not one they love. And maybe even the same with the Vikes if it just doesn't work out. If J.J. McCarthy, if the Giants decide to grab him at 6, if they don't even move up, and they don't want to grab Bo Nix or Penix at 11, same with the Broncos at 12, that teams are going to be maneuvering up to jump up there, knowing certainly the Broncos need more than just a quarterback right now, that then the Broncos can pick up a second rounder they don't have. Do the Raiders, if there's not a quarterback they love, do they slide back from 13? But I think there's so many good players in this draft, and because it's top heavy with quarterbacks, and we know those are overvalued, that there's 4 or 5 O-linemen that people think are 5-year, 10-year starters on the edge at one of the tackle spots, and 3 or 4 really good starting corners. And every year there's good receivers. This year's no different, but not just Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors. And so the one thing I'll say about Peter Schrager is, as we look at people across the league, he is plugged into more, I think, front offices and coaching staffs than most people realize. And because he doesn't broker information as much publicly, that's almost why I trust his mock draft and his predictions as much as anyone's. So it's not just dart throws. It's people really, really trust him. And the reason you know that is because he did a podcast with Sean McVay for 10 weeks, and they talked to, or 8 weeks or whatever it was, and they talked to every head coach under the sun. And they do that because not just of Sean, but because they trust Peter Schrager.
Brandon Krisztal, BK at BK Denver Sports is all right. 3-2. Brandon Krisztal at BK Denver Sports. My man is the bomb with the information and the opinions for KOA, a sister station of KFAN out Denver way. Just a couple to close here. Outside of the Covenant, day 1 of the draft, your Nuggets are up 2-0 on the Lakers. Our Timberwolves are up 2-0 on the Suns. So maybe we're on a collision course to play next round. That would be fantastic. How are the champions looking?
Well, they are shooting 26% on wide open threes and are still 2-0. And they definitely have not played their best basketball. Jamal Murray was pretty atrocious throughout that entire game too, but of course makes a couple big shots, the biggest being the game winner in Anthony Davis's face, which turns out apparently that was the first ever buzzer beater in the playoffs in Nuggets history. Now their playoff history isn't as long as some other teams, maybe slightly longer than the Timberwolves, but neither of those teams are the Lakers or Celtics, and we know that. And so the Nuggets kind of picked up right where they left off. We know health is key, but they're healthy right now. They're not maybe as deep as they were last year, because they have to play Reggie Jackson more than they like. They played DeAndre Jordan that first game. But when they're starting 5s on the floor, and this is a stat I didn't know until I just saw the other day, since Aaron Gordon got traded, and all 5 starters for the Nuggets start and finish the game, they're 38-0 against the Western Conference in those 38 games.
Oh, wow.
So if the starters are healthy, and we saw them in the playoffs, they were healthy. That's why. Now, I guess that had to be regular season because the math doesn't check out, since they obviously lost a game to the Suns,
right?
And then they lose a game to the Timberwolves, right? Because they went to 5. So, but I guess in the regular season they're 38-0. Still, when healthy, they're really good. They're just younger and thinner off the bench. But no, I'm planning on seeing you, PA, because after we get through this draft, I'm going to be traveling with the Nuggets, because I'm also working with a new platform called Guerrilla Sports, and they're going to send me to cover the Nuggets wherever they go. And I would love to see you in Minnesota. Maybe we'll catch a Twins game on an off day.
Well, we can get the Twins, but I mean, the 651 Carpets Plus studios are I don't know, 10 minutes to the west of Erotic City or Minneapolis and Target Center and Target Field and all that. So shoot, man, if that happens, then you're more than welcome to come in studio and do a little business with us. Because on the other side, if it does end up being Wolves and Nuggets, are you familiar with former Bronco Barney Chavis?
Sure.
Okay, well, his nephew Corey is a very good friend of mine.
Yeah.
So
Is Corey still doing all the draft stuff he was doing?
Yeah, he does a lot of it. He was on the show earlier today. He's second to none with his draft takes and his work.
Yeah.
So there's a chance, that Corey and I will be coming out there to maybe work with you a little bit at KOA and go to the game. So
awesome. Can I ask one quick question to you?
Of course.
Does trading up and throwing 23 and 11 and plus future first to get J.J. McCarthy at 4 or even 6, if you have to have 11 and 23 to get to 6, is that better than Bo Nix or Michael Penix at 11 and a starting tackle or I guess you don't really need wideouts, but a starting tackle or even a stud corner at 23?
Well, for me, it is. Now, who am I? Who cares? I don't watch a lot of college football, but I mean, we see how both operate at the combine. So it's more, that person's opinion hits 8 or 9 out of 10 times. And so I respect their opinion. That's why with Broncos personnel, I got put in that meat grinder at the combine with that McCarthy stuff that I shared on KFAN, and I stick by it. It's because it was right. So it's more about talking to people than my opinion. It's more of a thy, not I approach, but the thy part of it has been accurate for many, many years. So over here, for me, if they're going to trade up to 3 for Drake May, okay, then it's 3 first rounders and that's it. Okay, you ain't getting anything else. That's enough. If it's not that, I think 7 or 8 for McCarthy, and it's not 3 first round picks. Personally speaking, May and McCarthy pretty significantly ahead of Nix, and with the injuries to Penix Jr., there could be a slide with Penix Jr. because those injuries are real. And there are teams that I believe have red dotted him so that he's not going to be taken in the first round. So for me, it's one of the two, May or McCarthy, and then you're on your own after that.
Well, it's going to be a get your popcorn ready moment to quote our pal T.O. I can't wait for tonight. If there's 10 trades, if there's 6 trades, hopefully we see some movement. Although it's such a good draft that it's just going to be exciting. And I know Vikings fans are fired up to hopefully go get a new jersey or 2 tomorrow.
Thank you, BK. Hopefully we'll see you soon. Okay.
Sounds good, PA. I appreciate it. Enjoy it.
See you, man. Brandon Krisztal from KOA Denver, and it's at Brandon. It's at BK Denver Sports if you'd like to follow him on Twitter. Coming up next, one of our favorites, Alec Lewis from The Athletic and theathletic.com. Just quickly before we go to break, I'm going to say welcome home. Welcome back. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you. It's
good to see you.
I didn't dress up for this. I've got it. Look at me. I've got a hoodie. I feel like I've gotten run over by a bus the way I've slept the last 2 days.
This covenant is an opportunity for you to be yourself, for you to talk, and for you to be the dandelion picking, butterfly chasing cherub that you are.
I can't believe Diana.
That's a compliment. So let's stop right there.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say welcome home. It's great to have you back, and you quickly will realize why it's great to be back with that metaphorical welcome home mat right in front of you.
Thank you.
YA young Alec.
Good morning.
Alec Lewis from The Athletic and theathletic.com. He's next.